Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? It's so easy with Anchor.
Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use.
And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what we're doing right now by reading this ad. We struggled to find the right way to distribute our podcast, and Anchor made it quick, easy, and free. We're on platforms we had never heard of, and that's all thanks to Anchor doing the hard work.
So, if you have been thinking about starting your own podcast, head on over to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our very first episode of Spilling the Mad Tea. I'm Katie, and I'm joined today by my best friends and former Disney College program roommates, Stephanie, Kelly, and Rachel. We're glad you're joining us for an unbirthday party where we're going to spill the tea on all things Disney. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about when we fell in love with Disney, why we started this podcast, and our personal Disney aha moments. So, Kelly, why don't you start us off? What was your aha moment when you realized that Disney was going to be a part of your life forever?
My Disney aha moment was when my family and I were driving home from our second trip, I believe. I think it was around 2001, and I was probably about 10 years old. And I vividly remember lying in the very back seat of my mom's minivan and just like crying to myself and just being so upset because I was so sad that we were leaving Walt Disney World. My entire family was happy there, and that was when I realized that Disney was a very special place. So, Stephanie, what's your aha moment?
So growing up, my parents would always save their money for like a vacation, and we'd go on every couple of years. And when I turned 16, my mom gave me a budget and told me like, well, you can't have a sweet 16, but you can pick where we go on vacation this year. So I started doing all this research because I'm a thorough researcher, and I must have found some deal at Walt Disney World. And so that seemed like the best bang for our buck. And I wanted to like make the most of this trip because I'd been a couple times as a kid, but it felt different going as like a teenager where you're old enough to appreciate kind of like everything that went into that park. And so I did all this research and started listening to podcasts and reading books on the Disney parks, and then going there and having this incredible trip where we followed like touring plans and did everything there was to do in the parks. It was amazing. And I will never forget the extra magic hours I spent with my sister cackling through the Haunted Mansion or begging the cast members on Finding Nemo to let us go around one more time as we would like belt out the words to "In the Big Blue World."
That's always a good time.
It was so much fun. Like being there, like way past your bedtime, just like making these memories. And the memories I formed on that trip were just unforgettable. And I knew I would always be returning to Disney. And that was definitely my aha moment with the Disney company. How about you, Katie? Do you have like an aha moment with Disney?
So I first visited when I was 5, and I actually had no idea we were going to Disney. My parents loaded us up on a plane. We were living in New Mexico at the time. And I got off the plane, and I was a brat. And all I could do was complain. I was like, it's too hot here. It's humid. Like, I can't even breathe in this air. Like, what are we doing here? And we got to the Magic Kingdom that first day and walked in, and I saw that castle. And I still remember that feeling. And it's different coming as a kid because, of course, like there's a lot of things geared for kids and made for kids at Disney. But I've kind of grown up there now. My family's gone, every couple of years. And I feel like as I've grown, Disney's grown. But every time I go back, still I see that castle and I feel that same way. And it's like a place where you're at home and magic really is real and can be real.
That's so true. I feel like I don't remember the first time that I saw the castle, but I know like as an adult, every time I walk through those like train station archways, there's something about that view that kind of takes your breath away.
You definitely forget every like bad experience you've ever had there because it's Florida. It's hot. It's gross. It rains. But it doesn't matter. Like you see that castle and that's all gone. Rachel was actually with me on my first trip. So what was your kind of aha moment?
It kind of came a little bit later in life, but I remember a lot of the things when we were kids and doing what we were doing. We cried and whined a lot. But mine came like we went when I was a kid, when I was 5, and I was like, okay, cool. Disney's cool. Like, I enjoyed it. But I went back when I graduated high school, actually with you, Katie. I just remembered a lot of the things that I never thought I would remember. And it was a lot of stuff that I was like, oh my God, I remember that. I remember that. And it was like, that was the best part to me, being able to remember a lot of the things when I was a kid. And the main thing was when we went to Fantasmic when I was older, and I was just like, I felt like I was that kid again. Like, it was a nice feeling, and it was something that you get every time you go, and that's really important.
And that was without ever having seen Fantasmic before, too, right? It wasn't open that first trip we went.
I don't think
it was. So it speaks to Disney that a new experience still makes you feel the same way you felt as a kid.
While we've all had different things that have drawn us to Disney, the thing that drew us together was the Disney College program. We lived together from June 2011 to January 2012, and we've stayed the best of friends since then, even though we're on opposite sides of the country most of the time. We frequently end up discussing Disney in our everyday discussions, and we love each other and all things Disney, and that's why we wanted to start this podcast. On this show, we hope to share our unique voices within the Disney podcast community,
bring attention to some awesome things our fellow fans are doing to share their love for Disney through outlets such as Instagram and Etsy businesses.
Basically, just offer an escape from daily life. Get to immerse yourself in Disney universe, even if it's for 40 minutes with us while you're driving to work. But have that little bit of Disney even when it's not practical to go there all the time.
And also just to teach you guys something that you didn't know.
And with all that being said, we thought we should start our podcast by paying homage to our title inspiration, Alice in Wonderland.
So today we're going to talk a lot about Alice. And Walt's journey with Lewis Carroll's Alice started in the early 1920s. And that was almost 100 years ago, guys. Like, that's so long ago.
Wow. That's crazy.
And yeah, right? And between like 1924 and 1927, Walt Disney made like this big series of silent short features featuring live action Alice in cartoon land, referred to as the Alice comedies. And they were all kind of around like 10 minutes long, where this live action little girl interacted with all of these cartoon animals. Over like those years from 1924 to 1927, he made 56 of these shorts. They started as in the Laugh-O-Gram animation studio, and he kind of used the first creation he made as kind of like a selling point for himself. Like, look what I can do with my animation. I can mix these mediums, and he was kind of the first one to be doing this, and that's kind of what put him on the map. He had these 4 young girls, starting with Virginia Davis, followed by Margie Gay, Dawn O'Day, and Lois Hardwick. They all held the starring role of Alice over the years. But it wasn't until 1931 that Walt bought the rights to Tenniel's illustrations in the Carroll's books. If you've read Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, you would have seen Tenniel's illustrations, and they're beautiful. So Walt bought the rights to these illustrations, hoping to model a longer animation after these drawings. If you've ever seen these drawings, they're just black lines on white paper. The animators found them really difficult to animate. I mean, with computer technology today, it would be hard enough as it is, but doing it by hand was almost impossible. So as many times as they went back to these illustrations and tried to develop a longer story about Alice in Wonderland, it didn't really take, not until 1951. And that was when Walt finally released a full-length animated feature, Alice in Wonderland. Again, he brought in a young actress, 14-year-old Catherine Beaumont, to provide the voice for Alice. But she also acted out a lot of the scenes for the animators to illustrate. So similar to the way that they worked on the Alice comedies, where they had this little girl portraying Alice in this cartoon world, they had 14-year-old Catherine, acting out these scenes, and then the illustrators would animate her in the form of the Alice we know and love from the film. So Alice was finally produced in a unique style of animation that was originally inspired by the art of Mary Blair. And Kelly's really familiar with the art of Mary Blair because she is an artist in her own right. And I think she'd love to share some more about Mary Blair's work on this film.
So, as Stephanie said, in 1951, Disney released Alice in Wonderland, which, coming from my background with art, would not be as beloved of a film without the touch of Mary Blair. Mary attended the Chouinard School of Art in Los Angeles, which is where a lot of Disney artists and animators kind of got their start and learned while also working at the Disney studio. She met her husband there while studying, and he was hired first as a color director to work on Pinocchio and Fantasia. And then in 1940, Mary Blair signed on as a sketch artist working on Lady and the Tramp. So while she was working as a sketch artist on Lady and the Tramp, she was pretty underpaid and not very well known within the company. So Walt Disney was invited on a goodwill/research tour to South America, and he invited along, I think, about 18 other animators and just different employees within the company. And Mary Blair's husband, Lee, was actually invited to go along, and she went along with him. While in South America, Mary created many watercolor paintings inspired by the vibrant colors and life of the area. This experience would help lend a hand in creating her signature art style that was interpreted by the animators and background artists that were working on Alice in Wonderland. This concept art in watercolors added a whimsical and colorful flair to the movie that brings the fantastic story of Alice to life and can still be seen in the Disney parks today.
So I actually hated Alice in Wonderland as a kid. I thought it was a terrible movie. It scared me.
It's a little
I
scary.
was afraid of it. It is. Well, even watching as an adult, I'm like, God, this is not a kid's movie.
It's a little trippy. It's totally trippy.
It is. When we visited Disneyland, the four of us visited Disneyland together in November of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
We rode that Alice in Wonderland ride, and I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I get the hype. It's really cool. So November 2011, the four of us, it was really cool. It's like a trip to the motherland for us.
Best trip ever.
It really was the best trip ever. Cold and all.
Miserable, but whatever.
Miserable.
cold.
But I don't remember that because Disney is so magical.
You forget all of the terrible parts.
But we rode Alice in Wonderland, and it like clicked for me how cool this was, how it was like this cool fantasy land. But like writing it made it good. I still hate the movie. You'll never convince me the movie is cool. The movie is scary. I think the representation of Alice in the parks, it just speaks to like Disney and especially Walt's creations, like standing the test of time. Like this ride is just so unique and so cool. Disneyland's actually the only park it's in, which is becoming increasingly unique for Disney parks for them to have a ride only in one park. So it's a classic dark ride, which are starting to disappear in the parks, which makes me very sad.
So unfortunate.
It really is. They're good rides. They're basic and they're simple, but there's a reason that they were so popular and stay popular. It's one of the only ones, or it's the only one, that is 2 stories and takes you inside and outside. So you're really like, you feel like you're in Wonderland. You're like up, you're down, you're in, you're out. So it's just one of my personal favorites. And all the Alice in Wonderland rides, the teacups are iconic symbols of Disney parks. They're in all the parks but Shanghai. Like you can't talk about Disney without somebody saying something about a teacup. People who've never been there know about the teacups. I know a lot of people hate them. Kelly, looking at you.
Don't like spinning, will never ride. Sorry.
But like you can't deny, you think about Disney, like that's just one of the things that is Disney. And it's crazy that a movie that came out in the 50s still has relevant rides at the parks. When you have movies that came out in the 80s that are already being phased out. And then you also have mazes in Shanghai and in Paris, which I haven't been to, but I would love to see them. They even have plenty of meet and greets and merch and things like that.
There's many places in the parks that you can see or meet Alice. See her in Epcot, at the Garden in the UK. Also in Magic Kingdom, you can meet her in front of the Mad Tea Party ride.
Which we have done.
We did do that. You can also have breakfast with her or dinner with her at the Grand Floridian at the 1900 Park Fair, which we have done.
She's such a good character to meet, too. She's so personable.
As fun as like Alice is to meet, though, like I don't know if there's a better character you can like interact with than the Mad Hatter.
True. It's always fun to interact with a character that's allowed to be crazy.
Yes. Like, yeah, has like total permission to be off the walls. Like, just so funny every single time. Like, you're guaranteed to like walk away laughing.
There's also a lot of Alice in Wonderland merch. One of my personal favorites is the tea set that you can see all over.
Yes.
I love those.
I don't have any of that, but I really want some of that. The amount of Cheshire Cat stuff, from ears, the hats.
Yeah, Cheshire Cat is everywhere.
People love the cat.
They love the cats, those Disney cats.
I think people really relate to the like the "We're all mad here" thing. Like people just like love that.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I love it.
Love that.
That's like, it's
Yeah.
interesting if that's like one thing that really, that's like a line that particularly carried through from Lewis Carroll's book. Because Walt, when they were making the movie, he said, if it's not funny, like, don't keep it. Like, he's like, we're going for funny. And like, that's a line that they like kept like through and through, like through the movie, into the parks. Like, we're all mad here. I think everyone has those days where you're just like, yep, we're all a little whacked out. We're all a little mad here. So I think it's totally relatable and probably a big inspiration for this podcast.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
a little bit. Yeah, I think the argument could be made that Alice in Wonderland is actually more a movie about the Mad Hatter than about Alice.
Right.
Or the Cheshire Cat than Alice. She's just a player in their world.
I think that's part of the fascination with it, is that like viewers and guests to the park can really relate to Alice and be like, can relate to being thrown into this wonderland, this like land of fantasy. And it's, I mean, it's so fun to imagine. And then you go to the parks and you get to experience it. Like, you get to ride through Wonderland. You get to be Alice and like step in her shoes and go through this crazy land that seems so fantastical. And then you get off the ride and you're like, wait, I'm still in Disneyland. It's still fantastic. Like, it's still like this land of fantasy, and it's so fun. It's really relatable, and it's like a great escape from like the real world. It has been since Lewis Carroll's original story, and it, I think, will be as long as this movie keeps being reinterpreted and guests keep visiting these rides in the parks.
Right. And they're doing so many things with the live action movies.
Yes.
Totally different than the original, but still
Yeah,
good.
keeping things different but still the same is something that Disney's so good at. But at the same time, it's really hard to happen. There have been so many movies and franchises that they've tried to kind of resurrect from the dead, and it's just not worked for them. But I think Alice, they hit the nail on the head with Alice.
Was Alice the first one that they kind of did the reimagination from the 2D animation to the live action?
Pretty sure it's certainly the first one that I can remember that was good, at least.
Because now it just seems so common. They did it with Cinderella and the Jungle Book. And
Everything's getting a live action these days. But yeah, when it happened with Alice, it was like, what? They're doing what?
Actually, another live action Jungle Book that was made before this
really?
most recent live action
I didn't
Jungle
know that.
Book. I can't remember the exact year that it was made. Yeah.
Sounds like a good movie night movie.
Yes. Ooh. Monty agrees.
Have you guys ever seen the older one with the Jabberwocky?
The one where she's in this living room and she like goes
And she
through.
goes into the mirror.
Yes, it was like a special, wasn't it? It was like
It was a 2-parter, and I actually found it at Walmart.
That one scared me
one
even
day,
more than the cartoon.
randomly. Yes.
Was that a Disney movie?
I don't know.
No idea.
I don't know, but it was a 2-parter. It was definitely a TV movie, and my grandma had always told me about it, and I was like, I got to see this because this has got to be a joke.
Alice
And
had
I
brown
found it.
hair? Or am I thinking of something completely different?
I'm not sure.
Alice in real life had brown hair.
Hmm.
Fun fact.
But yeah, that one was cool. I liked that one. I found it and I've watched it several times. It's super long though. It's like 3 or 4 hours.
I feel like
long.
I remember watching it when it originally came on like ABC Family. And it was like so long that parents let me stay up to finish watching it because they were like, well, you started it. I guess you're going to have to finish watching it. And I remember having to stay up late to finish it because it was so long.
I think they rename like the Storybook Treats little quick service restaurant to like Cheshire Cafe. It's right across from the Mad Tea Party.
It was definitely something else
it's
because
really
when
close.
I was working at Cosmics, it was not Cheshire Cafe.
But like right in between the Mad Tea Party and the Cheshire Cafe, this is in Magic Kingdom we're talking about, is the Alice in Wonderland topiaries, which is probably one of my favorite decorations in all of the Disney parks. They are so cute. It's Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter, and the March Hare just sharing some cups of tea in
Precious.
plant form, and it's adorable.
I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people like that. I feel like that's part of the reason why they made the mazes in Shanghai and Paris,
Yes.
because it's so very Alice, the topiaries.
I haven't been, but I've watched several videos of the mazes through Disneyland Paris and Shanghai Disneyland. And it's interesting because the one in Paris is based off of the original Walt Disney animation, and it's like it's a high hedge maze, and you can physically get lost in it and have to find your way out. But upon your way, you go through like the Cheshire Walk, and you like go through the forest with the Cheshire Cat, and then you get to the Queen of Hearts' like land, and then you go to the Mad Tea Party, and you have all these great photo opportunities in Wonderland, which is just so cool. Like you're literally stepping into Alice's shoes, working your way through all these photo ops. And the one in Shanghai actually mirrors Tim Burton's live action Alice in Wonderland adaptation. And so you see like a huge, larger than life head of Helen Bonham Carter, like as the Queen of Hearts, and you go through all of the scenes from that movie, and it's really cool. Actually, even though like that's the only park that doesn't have the teacups in it, it's Shanghai Disneyland, they still have this like grand like ode to Alice in Wonderland in the form of this giant labyrinth, which is cool. That just like this little movie from how many years ago has made such a big impact on parks all across the world.
Which wasn't even that successful when it came out.
No, it was kind of a flop.
Yeah, crazy to think that a flop of a movie has such a presence in the Disney universe today.
And it's probably made them so much money.
They're probably so grateful for that flop.
And I think it's really cool that I was doing a little research on all of the rides and all of the Disney parks. And as we were trying to come up with like a name for our podcast and wanted to draw inspiration from not just the domestic Disney parks, but the parks worldwide, I was looking at rides that you can see in all of the parks across the world. And Alice in Wonderland's Mad Tea Party is kind of up there. The only rides that are in more parks are the Astro Orbiter, Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, and Dumbo.
Mm-hmm.
Those are in all of the parks.
And in most of the parks, they opened with the park as well. I think Hong Kong is the only one that didn't open with a teacup ride. It was added after the opening.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, what is it about these spinning cups that is like so...
It's like on the must-dos.
Yeah, it's totally a must-do. And there's never a line, which is great. It's always like a 10, 15-minute ride. You're always right on, right off. It's always a fun time.
Fact about the teacups, too. When they first opened at Disneyland in 1954, they had no brake system for 2 years. So you could go as fast as you wanted, spin as crazy as you wanted for 2 whole years before they finally put in.
That sounds like my worst nightmare would be spinning uncontrollably. That would not be a good time.
Coming from someone who worked across from them for a year at Walt Disney World, when they have a brake system, I clean up vomit at least twice a day. I can't even imagine how bad it would be. Yeah, so many protein spills.
Yikes.
Really? It was always people coming off of the teacups?
Always little kids coming up, especially first thing in the morning. They would go have like a character breakfast or even just have breakfast at the resort, and then they would, for whatever reason, hit the teacups like first thing in the morning. And the kids would get off, because you don't throw up right away. You just kind of start feeling queasy. So then the kids get off, and the closest place to walk into is Cosmix, and they walk right in and vomit all over the floor.
Oh, gross. And some Imagineer is like, let's put this in every park.
Right? This is great. We need more. So what are some other film representations that you guys really like in the parks?
Frozen Ever After. Frozen is definitely a love and a hate thing. I was sad to see Maelstrom go, but they did a really nice job with Frozen Ever After ride, I think. It's nice to ride, even though Stinky Elsa's there.
What's so funny is that when Frozen came out, you and I watched it so many times because you were obsessed with it. And now she's stinky
I
Elsa.
loved it. Okay, I loved it. But the reason why I don't is because they had a sing along. They had a this, they had a that, and it was all over.
It was. I think it was one of the first. Well, I say it was one of the first. One of the first times as an adult I can remember. All of a sudden, every merchandise was Elsa.
Elsa and
They really did. They
Anna.
flooded all the parks.
Yeah, and as much as like I think Frozen is totally overhyped, and as furious as I was about Maelstrom being removed from Norway, because let's be honest, Maelstrom was a representation of the country of Norway, and Frozen takes place in Arendelle, which is a fictional land. Okay, an episode, like a whole other episode in itself. I think I went on this ride for the first time with Katie, right?
Yeah.
And we like wanted to hate this ride. Like we were like determined to be like, no, Maelstrom was better. What were they thinking?
We were writing it so that we could hate it.
Uh-huh. We walked off with the biggest freaking smiles on our faces. It's adorable. And I hate how much I love it because it's perfect. And I hate it, but it's wonderful. So I totally get this love-hate relationship with this being one of the greatest and worst film representations as a ride in the parks.
I am a little disappointed, though, because I feel like they could have made it even better if they had just waited just a little while and put it in Fantasyland. Build a whole new ride for Frozen.
Not on the Maelstrom.
Let it have its own
Not
thing.
On the Maelstrom
Right, yeah. Don't be limited to what can we fit in on this existing
I miss those
track.
trolls.
Yeah, those trolls. Yeah, that being said, it's so cute.
It's such a feel-good ride. Even if you get wet, you're like, oh, I'm getting wet with like frozen happiness. It's fine.
Kelly, what's your favorite?
So my favorite is usually a very well-loved and classic ride, which is, of course, Peter Pan's Flight. I mean, you get to fly in a pirate ship. What could be better than that? And it follows along with the movie pretty well. And with the new queue that was built, like you don't even mind standing in the ridiculously long line that you have to stand in to ride it.
Yeah, that queue is adorable.
I haven't ridden it since the new line, and
It's very cute.
I'm a little.
It's great. I mean, it still does not excuse
still
the fact
waiting.
that there's a ridiculous line for that ride all the time.
120 minutes in the off season at midnight. I'm like, aren't these kids in bed? Like,
I don't understand.
who
I've
is this
never
line?
understood why that line is so long.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's got to be something with the ride mechanism itself. Like, it's such a
Yeah.
small space. You can only have.
It's just got such
Yeah.
a small capacity. It's a small space. You can only have like 2 or 3 people on a boat. It's like a 30-second ride. You just
Well, you got to think it was one of the first rides. This was when the park didn't get the volume of guests that it gets today. So they didn't think in terms of, okay, we need to hold this capacity. So, I mean, I guess I forgive it. It's still one of the best rides in the park.
I just wish that I would ride it more, but I don't because of the line.
yeah.
I do. I ride it every
I
time.
don't know.
The queue is so cute that you like want to wait in the queue, but you don't want to wait in it for like 95 minutes. I'm like, I would do 35
Right.
happily, but 95? No.
Yeah, that is a little ridiculous.
No.
No.
Yeah.
It's a really good representation of that film, though. Like, someone
Very
who's
good.
never seen Peter Pan could ride that, and they've seen Peter Pan now.
My favorite part
Right.
is when you're flying over London. Like, I think that's such a cool way that they created that. And the little cars, you can't see me doing finger quotes, but the little cars, which is just like the little dots on a little track just going over and over and again. I just think it's amazing.
It's actually, fun fact, like glow in the dark paint on a bicycle chain.
What?
Learn something new every day.
I know, right? These Imagineers, man, they make like something so everyday.
And it's so dark in there that
seem
you'll never actually see what it is. So
magical.
they're little cars.
Mhm. And lots of gum. Apparently, lots of people spit all over that
That's
ride.
gross.
That's nasty. I went one time though, and Wendy had a clean face. She had no gum.
What?
They had just cleaned her face. It was so nice.
Wendy had just got back from the spa. She's been at the Grand Floridian.
Like, it would never enter my brain while I'm writing something, hey, let me spit on this or stick my gum to
Right.
it. Like, who does that?
Blech.
Obviously someone does.
Terrible people.
Okay,
That's
well
who.
then, Stephanie, on that note of terrible people, Stephanie, what is your favorite ride that was first a movie?
Okay, I would definitely agree that like Frozen and Peter Pan are wonderful. But I waited a really long time for a Little Mermaid ride. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. It's so cute. I mean, you like, again, it's kind of similar to Alice in Wonderland, where you like can fantasize about being in this totally magical land different than real life. With The Little Mermaid, you get to go under the sea and see mermaids and these sea life singing and dancing, and it's totally magical, and you get to experience it firsthand. And as simple as they made the ride, it seems to, like just like a classic old dark ride. It's got the best songs, such bright colors, usually not too long of a line. And it's really great, especially at night. I love riding it right before park close. And the whole park's kind of empty. And you can go on maybe once or twice in a row with like only waiting 5 minutes, kind of walking right on. There's so many. See, that's a ride with a lot of capacity. It's a long ride with a whole lot of clamshells. And it's a great little omnimover there. And you get on and sing along, and it's
You don't feel like you're on there with a ton of people.
no,
It's
it's
just
very
you're
personal.
riding with Ariel.
Until you run into Ursula, and then you go under the sea. Like, it's so fun.
And I will never forget rounding that corner the very first time and seeing Ursula.
It's
It's
terrifying.
mind blowing. Yeah.
So scary.
The like blubber under like on her neck, like
Uh-huh.
bellows, and it's so good. Like that is because I think that ride in particular is really impressive, because at that point when they were building New Fantasyland, the Imagineers had all of this like really advanced technology, but they're still putting it in classic Fantasyland, and they made it blend pretty seamlessly with some of those old dark rides like Peter Pan that opened how many years ago. And then you have this very new Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure, but they're right next to each other and they go right hand in hand, and it's
Mhm.
really, really cool.
It's old style without feeling like it's old.
Yes. Yes.
It feels classic when it's brand new. I
Mhm.
love it.
I also love that Ariel's hair is an animatronic in itself. Like, they didn't just slap a wig on Ariel. Like, they made her hair look like it is floating, and it has its own like mechanisms and things that are moving within her hair to make it complete the experience that you're under.
Do you guys remember when we went to Disneyland and it was like the first time I think that we all rode that ride out there, and we rode it like 12 times in a row.
Yeah, I love that we all got to ride that
Yeah,
together.
it was in Disneyland before it came to the Magic Kingdom. And it has such a big ride capacity that you can put so many people on it. And we just rode it over and over and over.
With no line.
And over. And, like,
Yeah.
yeah, you like keep noticing new things, especially in the
Oh, yeah.
Sebastian's Under the Sea scene. Like,
Yes.
there's so many fish, and like the song is so fun, and like everyone in that room is just singing and dancing.
You
together.
can't ride that and not feel good. Like, you might have just gotten in a fight with your family because you're on vacation and everyone's tense, or it's too hot outside, or it's too cold outside. You ride that ride and you enter that room.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. You're happy.
Mhm. So that is definitely my happy place with a ride being influenced by a film. What about you, Katie? Do you have a favorite ride that's based on a movie?
Peter Pan will always be my favorite ride based on a movie. But a close second, and this one's a stretch, it's not technically based on the movie, but the new Slinky Dog Dash coaster in Toy Story Land is just awesome. You feel like you are a toy. Like, you really feel like you're riding on Slinky Dog. I rode in the back the time that I rode, so Slinky Dog's butt is like the back coaster. And his little tail wiggles, like his little slinky tail wiggles. The little details are insane. The coaster talks to
You
you.
were, like, backwards on the coaster?
I mean, there was a wagging tail. I had to appreciate the Imagineer's attention to detail. But it's kind of like a good in between. It's not an intense roller coaster, but it's not like the Barnstormer. So like it's enough that it's still fun for adults. It's so immersive. Like the whole queue is very kind of like Midway Mania. You are a toy. You are in the playground. You are one of Andy's toys. And then you get on the ride and that just carries through. And I rode it at night. I highly recommend riding it at night. All the lights are on. It's all colorful. You see like all the Toy Story land, and they've got like the big characters, and you've got huge Jessie and Rex, and you feel like a toy, and it's awesome. Really good like immersion into the story and making you feel like you're part of that film.
So I've got a question for you, because I think with like Rachel, Kelly, and mine's rides that we talked about in Frozen, Peter Pan, and Little Mermaid, you kind of go through like the stories of these films. Now with Slinky Dog Dash, like, did you find yourself like part of the story, or it was kind of like you're a toy, you hop on the back of like Slinky Dog and you like go for a fun ride?
It's not super storyline oriented. I mean, you're going through the line, you've got like all the Slinky Dog toys and like different board games and things in the queue. And then when you get on, you're like on the coaster set. So you're like on Slinky when he's going on the little Slinky coaster. And at one point you like wind up and then it like shoots you forward. But I mean, it's not one of those classic stories, but it's still really good. And it's still really good. Like you feel like your Toy Story carries through on that.
We've got to go. Research trip?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, research trip. Just for Slinky Dog Dash. I don't know that it's worth the lines for right now. Had I not had a fast pass for it, I don't know that I would have ridden it, because 3 hours for a ride like that is a little crazy.
Yeah, the college program kind of ruined long lines for us.
Yeah, we're also a bit of like line snobs. Like, we don't like waiting for
True.
So true.
When you can ride anything any day, you aren't going to wait for it. Anyway, so if anybody else has a favorite ride based off a movie, feel free to email us. Let us know. We're spillingthemadtea@gmail.com.
And also, don't forget to follow us at Spilling the Mad Tea on Instagram and Spilling Mad Tea on Twitter.
See you real soon.